Hello, everybody. It's Roger Durling, Executive Director of the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, and I am so thrilled to have the three talent in front of me to discuss the incredible film, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, written and directed by Eliza Hittman and starring Sidney Flanigan and Talia Ryder. I should tell you that this film has been sweeping all the critic awards nominations, and it's one of the most celebrated films of 2020, deservedly so. At the New York Film Critics, it won Best Screenplay, and Sidney Flanigan won Best Actress. And at the Independent Awards, it was nominated for Best Feature, Best Screenplay, Best Director, Best Female Lead, Sidney, Best Supporting Female, Talia, and Best Cinematography and Best Editing. Congratulations, ladies. And I'm going to pick up on the Best Cinematography. One of my ultimate favorite cinematographers is Helene Louvard, whose work in the past with Eliza in your previous film. And we were right before we came on, we were talking about that it's very subtle work, but it's so instrumental in the success of the film. Helene's work. Can you tell us, Eliza, about working with Helene Louvard?
Yeah, we started our collaboration in 2017 with my feature Beach Rats. So it was nice to work together again because we get to, expand our dialogue together from one film to the next. And she very much knows how I approach, shooting a film. For Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, it was important that there be a realism to the film without the film becoming too documentary or handheld or too harsh or too stylized. It's about finding this sort of sweet spot, I would say, to allow it to become this poetic journey, and not this overly kind of documentary where you always feel the shake and the presence of the DP. There's a subtlety to how the film is shot, to how it's lit, to just really allow the emotions of the film to come through in a sort of simple and honest way. And I think our goal on a fundamental level was to create an honest portrait.
And I will include the ladies shortly. But the scene, the famous scene, the one that gives the film its title, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, where is a 10-minute single take. I've seen it a couple of times, and I'm amazed at how it was captured, where I don't think I've ever seen anything like it, in the sense that the camera, you mentioned, is not shaky, but also it's not static. It almost feels like the camera is floating without a camera person behind. I mean, it doesn't feel like there is a subjective camera person behind it. Can you talk about that approach and how was that achieved?
Mm-hmm. Well, Helene, she built a rig that a lot of the film was photographed on, or some scenes, I should say. There's a lot of tools that are used. There's dollies in places and Steadicam, but there's also this rig that's very specific to Helene, that allows her to sort of suspend the camera on a kind of cord and operate in a very fluid way that can do things that a tripod can't do, but erases her presence behind it, and it allows the camera to breathe. So we shot a lot of things, and it creates a very, a kind of movement that is synced with the behavior and movements of the characters.
Sidney, that is one of the most vulnerable most powerful scenes I think I've seen in the past year, and it's a remarkable performance on your behalf. Can you tell us about that, shooting that scene and having that rig in front of you, and at the same time being so exposed, so vulnerable?
Yeah, I mean, it was the scene was the type to shoot where I felt very vulnerable and exposed. It's a moment where Autumn is very vulnerable, and but also a place where she's finally sort of like safe, because throughout the whole movie she's pretty much like constantly in situations that are unnerving and just like on edge. And when we were shooting that scene, there were like two cameras on me, I believe. There was like one like here and one like here. So I was very, sort of like trapped between them. And I also had some time to myself before we shot, which was really nice. They gave me a room to sit in alone and kind of be away from all of the commotion. And I was able to kind of just like sit and reflect on like my own thoughts and experiences, especially like I think like as a young woman, and like to connect to those experiences and to try to use my own experiences to inform Autumn's experiences, and like, how she might be feeling in this moment where, this woman is asking her these questions that are, quite personal, but like that I feel like someone's probably never asked her before, really. Mm-hmm. And like she's finally able to like really release this, and just like, yeah, just being in that headspace of like vulnerability and like sort of just like really like letting go and finally like releasing all of that energy that can get like trapped up inside of you. It like felt really good to kind of like harness that and release it all at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Eliza, the scene that's, and I'm sorry to just obsessing about that particular scene. Was it always planned that it was going to be one single, long take? I know that the camera does a few takeaways to give us a little breathing room, and then it comes back. Was that always the way you envisioned that scene?
Yeah, I had always planned to shoot it as a long take. I wrote the scene, or I wrote the scene, and as I was workshopping it with the woman who is a real counselor, I timed it so that it would be the length of a can of film. So there was a lot of precision in the writing of the scene, and making sure that it could like live and breathe within a full can. I used a few cutaways in the beginning to create a little context around the scene, but I most certainly didn't need them. And the whole scene plays as a long take, from beginning of the can of film all the way to the end of the can of film. And I think it's meaningful to take on those challenges. And so much of what we see that's digital doesn't have the same risk. There's tension and a risk and stakes that are all elevated when you come, when you're shooting on film, that come with shooting on film. With something that's digital, you can just kind of click delete and erase it, and you've lost nothing but time, but there's something about film for me, that still has sort of beauty and stakes and captures emotion in a way that digital can't.
Mm-hmm. Skylar, I can't believe I'm calling you Skylar. Talia, Ryder, you play Skylar, and what a wonderful character it is. I was just amazed how unconditional she is towards Autumn, and that you don't ask questions, you just are there to support and take care of her. Can you tell us about your approach to the role and building the character?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm an older sister, so I think I was able to really understand Skylar's brain and why she did the things that she did throughout the story. You have that sort of understanding for what another girl is going through, because in a sense, Skylar's probably lived not the same, but similar things, and probably wished that she had somebody like herself to help her through stuff like that. So she's just unconditionally there for her cousin. And I have friends in my life who have been kind of Skylar figures to me at times. And so I was able to think back on my experiences and pull from different relationships in my own life.
Mm-hmm. Eliza, would you take us back a little bit and tell us how this film started for you and, the journey of writing and developing the story?
Yeah, I started working on the film a long time ago, in like 2012, and it started with a real life event. I read an article in a newspaper about a woman in Ireland who passed away after being denied a life-saving abortion, and I started to think about how far. Yeah, Savita Halappanavar. Yeah. I read about her story, and I originally wrote a treatment for a film set in Ireland, actually. But I felt like it was too ambitious and nobody was going to give me money to make a movie in the UK. And the more research and reading I began doing, I thought like, well, this is a journey that people take all over the world, but you never hear about it because it's a journey that's shrouded in shame and in secrecy. And I really feel like my role as a filmmaker, as an artist, is to put experiences on the screen that you wouldn't ordinarily talk about and to bring light to them. So I really thought about this journey that many people take to gain access to abortion care as a life-saving journey in a way. And to write the script, I would say I'm not a very disciplined writer. Like, I don't love sitting at a computer. And for me, I'm an explorer and I like being out in the world. So I went to the town in Pennsylvania where I thought I wanted to set the film. I went to care centers, pregnancy care centers, like the first place depicted in the film. I took pregnancy tests. I talked to, these layman women who work at those centers. I got on the bus. I went to Port Authority. I went to Planned Parenthoods. And I just tried to imagine the film on my feet, in the world, and then bring all of those experiences back to my apartment and back to the computer. But for me, it's a very exciting way to explore and to write and to see what people really go through and try and understand firsthand the issues so that they're depicted in a credible and realistic way, but also imagine them through the perspective of the character.
Mm-hmm. You chose Pennsylvania, and you don't mention the town, but we do get there's a specificity to this town, to this coal mining town. Can you tell us about why you chose that particular area in the United States?
Well, I chose to explore the real barriers that people under 18 confront when needing an abortion. And we have 36 states in America that have parental consent laws, that make it impossible for a young person to get an abortion without, their parent or without judicial bypass. And Pennsylvania has those laws. And for me to make the story believable, I felt like she's taking a journey. It's the scariest, biggest journey she's ever taken, but it's really only a 3-hour journey. And that town in Pennsylvania, it's like it's set back in time. You know, it's a forgotten area of the state. It's cut off. You know, there's no more industry, and it's really economically depressed, you know, and people are, you know, cut off from having real resources. And it made sense to me, you know, that she wasn't gonna come from Ohio. You know, she was gonna come from a state that was so close by, but yet feels like, you know, the middle of America, a sense. Mm-hmm. And you could capture middle America, you know, or the South, you know, Appalachia, sort of through just being in Pennsylvania, where all the real legal barriers exist.
Mm-hmm. It's actually, my next question is to Sidney and Talia together, is that there is so much of a bond between the two of you, and from us, from an audience, feel like we understand that there's so much history between the two of you, that there are secrets that we will never know about, but that you've shared. And can you tell us how you guys were able to build such a strong bond that comes across in the film?
Well, a lot of what you said is quite exactly what it was.
Yeah.
One of like, you know, one of the most establishing sort of like exercises that helped us bond was when Eliza gave us these like composition books she bought and wrote like 3 writing prompts in each of them with like, you know, some pretty personal questions about like, you know, like ourselves, our own histories. And we like, you know, wrote our answers for a little while, and Talia and I shared them with each other privately. And like, you know, when you just like share information like about yourself like that with another person that you've never, you know, that you barely know, like you're definitely going to come out of it feeling a little like feeling bonded and connected to each other. And, you know, sometimes you realize, you know, things about other people that, you know, you're more like in other ways than you didn't realize on the outside, you know. And I just instantly like found myself connected to Talia, and then it just really started to develop more and more every day on set. You know, she was a person that was just like I could like talk to and lean on, you know, like when things felt difficult or I was tired, you know, a little irritated, like Talia was definitely like my rock for that.
And Talia, you know, tell us your side of the story. You know, getting to know her. How much time did you have rehearsal with Sidney?
Like 3 days.
What?
Yeah, it was really fast, but definitely doing that journaling exercise right off the bat, I don't know, that's like the quickest way to get to know someone. I don't think I've ever made a friend like that so quickly. And the other thing that Eliza had us do in rehearsal, she had us do makeup on each other and do lines while we were doing makeup, and I think hair too and stuff, to build like a physical connection so we weren't afraid of being close to each other. And Eliza also had Sidney practice her songs for me and play music for me, and getting to see Sidney in her zone and doing something that she loves, and reminded me of my sister. And knowing Sidney now, sort of as we did in 3 days, I definitely just felt our friendship growing and started to feel like Skylar, like protective of her, and I have a lot of love for her.
Eliza, that's did you know the moment that you saw them together that they had this bond? And I mean, since you only had like 3 days rehearsal, you needed for them to galvanize together.
Yeah. In a way, like the casting process was challenging, and it came together like sort of just right before we were ready to shoot, like right into prep. And Sidney was cast, and then we were doing these chemistry reads and callbacks, and Talia walked in the door and she just had all of this like lightness and energy, like this levity to her. And she sat down she kind of floated into the callback room, and she sat down with Sidney, and she started to tell us like her life story in this really personal and open and honest way, and revealed things, unexpectedly, that made me really respect her. And I also saw that they had a connection, like immediately. They're both from Western New York. They're both from Buffalo. And it seemed immediate, actually, in the room. And I wanted the characters to have, this sort of be this kind of unit, but also have these very different energies. Sidney has this kind of darkness and this, inner world that's grappling with something. And Talia needed levity, character needed like lightness and some optimism. So, it was immediate, I would say, and kind of like a miracle, because I wasn't sure we were gonna find the right Skylar to begin the shoot, if I'm being honest. And it felt instant when she sort of floated into the room.
Sidney, I read it. Is it correct? I read that you weren't too keen in auditioning and being part of the film.
I mean, when I was first approached about it, like when Scott Cummings emailed me telling me Eliza was making this film and that they were interested in me, I mean, it was just like such a bizarre thing to get, like email to get, seeing as I wasn't pursuing an acting career. And so like, I just remember thinking like, I can't, it was just terrifying. It was a scary thing. So at first I immediately kind of turned it away, because sometimes, that's what people do. They're afraid to take risks. And, it was just, I just didn't think I could really do it. And, they twisted my arm a little bit, and I have to be, I have to be thankful, I think, to Eliza and Scott for giving me that push, because like, and, and my friends and family encouraged me as well. And, like after, and like reading the script and all that, and like, after some time, I was just like, this could be really cool, because like I knew it could be really cool. I was just also really scared, and like, so it was all about, like looking past the fear and just being like, I'm just gonna do it, and so yeah, at first I was immediately like, no, I can't do this, but eventually, with the support of everyone, and I was able to go ahead and give it a shot and challenge myself.
I think her first response, if I remember, was something like, but it's acting. Like, why would I do acting?
I have to ask, you're a singer, Sidney. What was it like working with Sharon Van Etten, whose music she plays your mother, and she's such a great musician. What was that like?
Oh, I mean, it was just like such an honor. I mean, I only was like familiar with like a couple of her songs, like when we started working with her, but like after working with her, I've literally started listening to just like everything she has. Like I just have been blowing through her discography since I came home, and it made me love her even more. And I'm just like, wow, I really got to work with, like, she was just like a really, like, she just had such a like cool and calm and like down to earth like vibe about her, and she was just like, it was great. I loved her.
Talia, you're from you live in New York City, and you're familiar with New York City. One of the interesting things about this film is that we always see New York, people coming into New York City, and they're excited about being in New York, and it's an adventure. But then this film shows us these two characters overwhelmed and scared of, it is scary the way that your journey into New York City. Can you, was that a challenge for you to convey that?
Honestly, no. I guess I sort of felt similarly to the girls rather than the New York you usually see in movies. My first couple of times in New York, it was the winter and it's cold, and cabs are expensive. You can't take cabs everywhere like they do in the movies. You have to navigate the subway system. And yeah, I guess I had to think back to my earlier times in the city and what that felt like. But it's really easy to feel threatened and really, really small in New York. It sometimes isn't as welcoming as you'd like it to be. And I like that Eliza showed that other side to that in the film.
Eliza, you don't editorialize the visits to the health clinics, and can you tell us about that approach, that you don't politicize it, you just present it to us as they are?
Yeah, I think it was tricky. I was scared in writing the script that it would be overly didactic or feel too like propaganda-ish, and I tried to find my own way to do it, which was to just keep it subjective. Like, the people who work there aren't heroes. They're just real people doing real jobs. This is a real girl who, is scared of what she's about to do. The procedure itself is intimidating. And I felt like if from beat to beat, I could show all of those emotions that she was experiencing, it would be able to find and, show it authentically without, politicizing. And I think the biggest choice that I made was that she doesn't have a moral dilemma about it, that she goes into it clear-headed. And I think that's true to life, that people know what's best for themselves in their hearts, and they don't go back and forth. They do what they need to do for themselves. And unfortunately, we don't live in a system that supports that or makes that possible.
Yeah, how soon, and I will also ask the same question to Sidney. It's you make a point that the movie is less about the decisions that she makes, but it's like the journey that she goes through and the obstacles she encounters. How early on did you decide that, I'm not going to deal about her questioning the decision, that it's only about the journey?
From the beginning, I would say it was always the way that I was planning to approach the film. My reference for the movie and thinking about it is the Bresson film, A Man Escaped.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I thought it's just about these sort of tactile obstacles, these small obstacles, and it's about her, reclaiming her body.
Yeah. Yeah. And Sidney, tell us about playing that character. The fact that she's made up her mind and it's solely about fulfilling what she needs to do. What was that for you, inhabiting that character?
I'm definitely glad that's what it was, because I think that it's realistic. I think that, a lot of times when I watch like television or a movie and I see like a character that gets pregnant and all of a sudden it's like, oh no, I'm pregnant. And they never even present the option of abortion sometimes. It's always just like, oh no, now I have to have this baby. And, or they're like debating with themselves whether they should have an abortion or not, if that's even an option. And like, I just think, honestly, like, I just like with most of the women I know and the experiences like that I think they have, like, I think most of the time it's just kind of like when that happens, they're like, what can I do to like not have this baby, is like mostly of the time like what people are going for. So I think it was like easier for me to embody someone who was just like, oh crap, like I got to do something. Like that was the instant reaction. It's just like, this can't be happening. This cannot be happening. And like, I need to take care of this now. And there's that sense of urgency and anxiety, and just like every day is just like crazy until like that the problem is gone.
Yeah, I have to ask you a question. And Talia, it may come across as odd that another character in this movie is this wheelie suitcase that you haul all over New York City. Can you tell us about your experience of having this prop that you lug around all of New York?
Yeah, I met the suitcase on my final callback actually. Eliza, I guess, was auditioning our fellow suitcase as well, and she had us take the suitcase around on the subway and stuff during the callback. And then, sure enough, it ended up being on set, and we got really, really familiar with that suitcase. We carried it everywhere. And it actually was heavy. Eliza had like put stuff in it to make it actually heavy. And I really like that they're carrying this physical bag around during the film. I feel like it represents so much more. And that's like always the first question that my friends ask me after they see the film. They're like, wait, what was in the suitcase? And I explained that they packed a lot of clothes. There's a shot of us in Autumn's bedroom, and my character is just throwing clothes in the suitcase, kind of, I think, with the hope that they're going to maybe get to do some more stuff or see the city or turn it into a fun trip. And then the reality of it is that they can't really do any of that, and they're just stuck carrying this big suitcase around.
Yeah, you know, Eliza, it's a beautiful symbol, and what I love about it is the open-endedness about it, the different interpretations that we associate with them lugging all this weight around. How the working with Kelly, the social worker, she's actually a social worker in real life, right? And and tell us about casting her and working with her with a movie.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Planned Parenthood, and I got a chance to really see the inner workings of those facilities. And I talked to Planned Parenthood in Pennsylvania all about minors and traveling, and I met with them in New York. And then there was something that, inside me that said, go to a clinic that's not Planned Parenthood, just to get an outside perspective, see how a private clinic works. And I went to this place in Queens called Choices, a clinic called Choices, where I had a friend who was working as an escort. And Kelly Chapman was the social worker I met. And I remember going into her office, and she was wearing scrubs, and it looked like it had been like a long, rough day. And I just said, tell me about the work that you do. And she unloaded on me in a way that I didn't expect about all of the challenges of what she does. And when I sat down to write the script, her voice was just in my head. And when we started casting the film, I basically had a hard time seeing anyone else and thought, what if I use a real social worker? What will that bring? What will that add? And I think it contributed a lot to the effectiveness of the pivotal scene. And I think that Kelly created a real safe space for Sidney. And I don't think it would have been the same if it had been two actors acting.
Plus,
she worked with me. She worked with me on the scene. I married what I had written to what she does in real life, and it's a real sort of fusion between the, honoring her profession and the work she does and the style and the sensibility of my writing.
So a lot of the dialogue, the questions that she asks are verbatim what she know.
Yeah.
And Sidney, what was it like working, having those scenes with Kelly?
I mean, she definitely really helped create like sort of that feeling of a safe space to, to say those kinds of things, you know, for Autumn, or maybe even for a little bit of myself.
Mm-hmm. And that scene, which I find it so poetic, so beautiful, that you reach out to, you know, Kelly. Was that Eliza and Sidney? Was that planned? Was that in the script, that you reach out and hang on to each other?
Yeah, in the operating room.
In the operating room.
Yeah. I asked Kelly, I said, do you go in with patients? And she said, if they want me, I go in with them. So I wrote in what she does. There's a moment right before the second part of the procedure, and Kelly like taps Sidney on the head. It's a small gesture like this right before she goes under anesthesias. And Kelly says she does that to patients all the time. So I sort of wrote in little details of, you know, what Kelly really does. And she while she was working at Choices, she would go in and support people through the entire procedure.
Mm-hmm. And Talia, the character of Jasper, he's such an ambiguous character. We never know whether he's where he stands. It's very ambiguous. You know, tell us about working those scenes with him.
Yeah, Theo was great. He was a really cool person to get to do scenes with. Yeah, I think on the bus initially, Skylar's receiving attention from this boy Jasper, and this, I assume, is a pretty regular thing for her. She doesn't think too much of it, but being incredibly savvy and thinking ahead, she reaches back out to Jasper to perhaps hang out with him, but what she is thinking is that she's going to ask him for money because they need to get home, and he's really their only connection in New York City to do that for them. So she puts, I think, a lot of trust into this stranger that you may not in another situation, because she kind of sees it as a last resort. And she has this moment with him in Port Authority where they are exchanging a kiss of sorts. I say of sorts because I don't know how enjoyable it really was for her, but it's kind of this sad but heroic moment because she truly is sacrificing herself for her cousin and for the journey that they took to basically save Autumn.
And there's yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's, yeah, it's a sad moment, but it really, it shows how much Skylar loves Autumn, which I think is really beautiful.
And there's a beautiful parallel moment that between Kelly and Sidney and you and Sidney, where you reach out to each other through the column. Was that, Eliza, and all three ladies, was that planned, that scene where they reach out to each other again?
Yeah, it was planned. I wanted a moment of like unspoken acknowledgement to each other that, you know, in a way, you know, what Sidney had done in New York would remain a secret between them, but also what Talia had done. So, you know, I wanted some sort of shared acknowledgement, you know, that wasn't through dialogue, you know, that this was, you know, this sort of quiet, you know, experience that they'll never speak of again.
Sidney, you actually do two songs in the movie, and you know, were you the one that chose the two songs that you sing, because they do speak a lot about your character?
Yeah, I did get to choose. I got to choose from options, but like I remember immediately when I was like presented with like, oh, here's like some choices of that, you know, we're looking at, and I just like instantly knew which ones felt right. Like I was just like, I don't know, they just spoke to me and the character when I would hear them, and it was really fun getting to you know, kind of work with both of those songs.
Mm-hmm. And Eliza, there is these young ladies suffer. I'm going to call them microaggressions, but they are not microaggressions. They get these aggressions from men. You know, the manager at the supermarket. You know, the stepfather, the kid in the man on the subway. You know, can you tell us about those aggressions that happen throughout?
Mm-hmm. I wanted, you know, in a way that the film is this odyssey, and the environment, you know, played a central role in this odyssey, you know, and part of what they're navigating, you know, in a grander sense, you know, is this patriarchal structure. But I wanted to find a way to articulate that moment to moment and show the subtle and, you know, the kind of hostile sexism that exists in our daily lives. And yeah, it, you know, some of it is small, some of it is not small. But I think that part of growing up is learning how to contend with those, you know, with that environment every day. You know, there's not a day in my life that is not somehow impacted by, you know, the sexism that exists in the film industry, you know, in academia where I work as a professor. You know, it's everywhere. And some of it is below the line and some of it is over the line, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And Sidney, what has been your journey like since the movie came out? And how are you dealing with all the accolades and all the nominations and the great reception the film's been getting? Did you ever expect all of this?
No. I did not see any of this coming, like all of it, you know, being a part of Never Rarely, and you know, getting to do all the festivals and the awards, and it's been so amazing and validating, and like just so great to see the film getting recognized and having so much support. And you know, it's also been a bit of a unique experience because like we started the year out with last year out with going to like Sundance and then Berlin, and then COVID hit, so like we've moved to doing everything virtually. So, you know, there's been some things I felt like I missed out on, but at the same time I'm just really glad that people are seeing the movie and that they're receiving it so warmly. And it just feels really good.
Mm-hmm. Talia, what about you? Have you been enjoying the ride?
Yeah, you know, it's been really cool to talk to a lot of different people about the film, and having the film come out has been really cool. I mean, I'm sure for Sidney and Eliza too, I've gotten countless really, really kind messages on social media about liking the film and connecting to the film. And a lot of girls my age have reached out and just said that they really appreciated the film for one reason or another. And that's been really, really nice.
And Eliza, you know, tell us, you know, what is it that you like us? What, I mean, I'm obsessed with your film, but what would you like the rest of the audience to get out of your film?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's not a message-driven movie. You know, for me, it was all about putting the audience through the process, a male audience, most importantly, but for people to have some deeper understanding, you know, of what people go through. I mean, that's really my goal with any film about any issue. But I think also at this moment, and, you know, over the last 4 years and contending with Trump as president, I saw it as an opportunity to make something that is urgent, that is political, and that speaks to the crisis, you know, of our times, and to use the film as an opportunity to be an activist and to go out into communities and to talk about, you know, an issue that is really important to me.
Yeah, you know, I'm also a professor, Eliza, and I was, you know, I'm a big, you know, fan of Vittorio De Sica and Bicycle Thieves, and I was in class actually showing Bicycle Thieves and telling them, showing scenes from your movie, and showing them that this is a modern. As important as that film may have been at the time, your film speaks so much truth. It's such a powerful, powerful, powerful film.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the three of you, you guys are so talented. And I'm so glad to have gotten this chance to talk with you. Thank you. Thank you, Sidney. Thank you, Talia. And we'll see you soon, Eliza. Congratulations, all three of you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.